although China has repeatedly refuted rumors, clearly stating that there have been no contacts regarding tariff issues between China and the United States. The US side has ignored these clarifications and continued to fabricate false information about bilateral tariff negotiations. Recently, US President Trump suddenly announced that he was prepared to lower tariffs on China, while also setting so-called preconditions. According to a Reuters report on May 5th, during an interview on Air Force One, President Trump revealed that he had no plans to speak with Chinese officials this week. However, US officials were communicating with their Chinese counterparts on various issues. He also claimed that China had been taking advantage of the United States in global trade over the years, and even criticized former President Nixon's decision to establish diplomatic relations with China as one of the worst things ever done. Such remarks fully demonstrate the US's ambivalent attitude towards China. On one hand, the US wants to sit at the negotiation table with China to discuss a series of issues, including tariffs and trade. On the other hand, it doesn't want to appear overly eager, trying to maintain its so-called dominant position and emphasize its leadership. As a result, when dealing with China, the US's words and actions are full of contradictions. Trump first announces tariffs on China and then calls for negotiations to sign a new trade agreement. In the past few days, he once again hinted that he might lower tariffs on China at some point. Trump stated that the current import tax rates were too high, pushing the world's two largest economies, China and the United States, to the verge of ceasing trade. But he still wanted to do business with China and believed that China also wanted to trade with the US, so tariffs could be reduced appropriately. Trump has made similar statements many times, yet the US has not made any actual changes. Moreover, Trump's tariff policies are extremely erratic. Even if he were to announce the complete removal of all tariffs on China, there is a high possibility that they could be reinstated. The day after Trump signaled a potential tariff cut, he announced a 100% tariff on all foreign films, and the US Department of Commerce would take immediate action. Although he didn't explicitly mention China, this move was clearly targeted at the country. During this year's Chinese New Year film season, Chinese movies led the way, breaking global box office records and leaving many renowned American films far behind. The United States and other Western countries have come to realize that China's spirit of bold action, perseverance, and the ability to overcome difficulties is not only evident in the economic and technological fields, but also in the film industry, which has long been dominated by Western powers. Therefore, Trump is intimidated, and his newly announced tax measures are a warning to Chinese industries. But for the Chinese people, is this really a problem? Previously, Trump baselessly claimed that China was extremely eager to reach a tariff agreement with the US, and he welcomed this. However, he set a precondition: any trade agreement between China and the US must be fair. He also alleged that former President Biden had lost $1 trillion due to Sino-US trade. Trump's remarks seem to imply that his consideration of lowering tariffs is a favor to China, as if China would be unable to hold on if the US didn't reduce tariffs. It should be clear that in the tariff war, there will be no true winner. But the first to be overwhelmed will definitely not be China, but the United States, which initiated the tariff war. Due to the impact of tariffs, in the port of Los Angeles, the largest container port in the US, 17 voyages carrying 224,000 containers have been cancelled. By June, 12 more voyages have already been confirmed for cancellation. Jean Soroka, the executive director of the Port of Los Angeles, said that consumers would be affected. In the next 2 weeks, the port's import business would decline by about 1/3, and the drop could be as high as 40% the following week. Most US importers have stated that they have stopped shipping goods from China because they simply cannot afford the situation where the cost of goods has tripled. Soroka emphasized that with the situation in Washington changing almost hourly, it was extremely difficult to predict what would happen next. Currently, everyone is in a state of waiting and watching. From a retail perspective, the current inventory in the US can last for about 6 to 8 weeks, after which store shelves will be empty. On May 2nd, the US government officially ended the duty-free policy for small Chinese packages. As a result, some e-commerce platforms have had to restructure their logistics systems, and the prices of some products have more than doubled. Some foreign brands have stopped shipping to the US, and some small and medium-sized enterprises have even chosen to withdraw from the US market. Mario Cordero, the author of Containers Don't Lie, exposing the truth about our broken global supply chain, said that in the coming months, US consumers would face more widespread price increases and shortages of goods. Cordero predicted that starting from June, consumers would see more impacts on the inexpensive products they were used to buying online, such as fast fashion items and products on Amazon. The reason is that small businesses do not have the means to stockpile large quantities of goods in advance. The back-to-school season in the United States in July is a crucial juncture. Parents start purchasing school uniforms and school supplies for their children, and the prices of all stationery items, such as school bags and notebooks, will be affected. In fact, the retail and daily necessities markets have already sounded the alarm. Executives of large retail enterprises like Walmart and Target have successively appealed to the US government to reach a tariff agreement as soon as possible. Otherwise, American malls will either have empty shelves or experience skyrocketing prices. Statistics show that at the industry level, tariffs have not led to the return of the manufacturing industry. Instead, they have increased the survival pressure on industries that are dependent on raw materials. 30% of the pharmaceutical raw materials in the United States rely on imports. Business owners in various industries such as stationery, clothing, and electronic products have frankly admitted that it is difficult to find alternative supply chains within the country. Taking the pharmaceutical industry as an example, Carl Soto, an insider in the investment field of pharmaceutical health and biotechnology in the United States, analyzed and pointed out that the so-called industrial relocation should be relocation here is simply unfeasible because the United States currently has no ability to achieve the localization of pharmaceutical research, development, and manufacturing. In addition, affected by the tariff policy, US capital expenditure is also being setback should be setback translated as hit or suffered a setback. Many small and medium-sized business owners have reported that tariffs have brought them serious financial burdens and bluntly stated that they cannot endure the so-called short-term pain mentioned by the US government. Some analyzers also point out that whether enterprises can maintain their operations and investments amidst the turmoil will be directly related to the medium-term stability and long-term vitality of the US economy. As a result, in the future, the American people will continue to face a triple-should-be dilemma of rising consumption costs, reduced services, and increased employment pressure. Professor Justin Wolfers of the University of Michigan further pointed out that if the tariff policy continues, it will bring an uncertain situation to the US economy and also comprehensively change the economic lives of Americans. Wolfers said, "The higher the tariffs, the less trade we will have with other countries. The pain brought by the new tariff policy will be 50 times that of Trump's last term, because this time the tariffs are not only much higher but also applied to all goods from all countries. This means that every aspect of your life will be affected." Since Trump launched the tariff war, it can be seen from the official attitudes of China and the United States which side is actually bluffing. Trump and a group of US high-ranking officials have been hyping up false news about Sino-US tariff negotiations every day. One day they spread the news of increasing tariffs, and the next day they fabricate stories about reducing tariffs. The government lacks any continuity in its policies, issuing orders on a whim and treating national affairs like a child's play. In contrast, China has a firm attitude. "We welcome negotiations, and we are ready to fight if necessary." If the United States does not take the lead in cancelling the huge tariffs first, then China will never agree to negotiate with the United States. In the face of China's unwavering stance, the Trump administration has also admitted that it made a wrong judgment, mistakenly believing that China could quickly yield. However, in the face of China's tough counterattacks, the United States can only persevere reluctantly and then pin its hopes on reaching a tariff deal with China as soon as possible. Trump has just completed 100 days in office, but the US economy has already been thrown into chaos. According to US media reports, the US Department of Commerce recently released the GDP data of the United States for the first quarter of 2025, which shrank by 0.3% compared with the same period last year. Although Trump has shifted the blame for the economic decline to the former President Biden and emphasized that this situation has nothing to do with the tariff war. Economists have warned that if the White House does not stop the tariff war, then the US economy is likely to fall into a full-scale recession this year, and the GDP may decline by 4%. The economic situation in the United States is not optimistic, and the country's international reputation has also plummeted. The Trump administration's capricious policies, which are like those of a makeshift team, and its exploitative treatment of allies have caused traditional US partners such as Europe, Japan, and South Korea to become alienated. They have successively contacted China, hoping to strengthen economic and trade cooperation to deal with the self-destructive impact of the US tariff war. Therefore, in this situation, if China and the United States can reach a major tariff deal, then Trump will undoubtedly be able to heave a sigh of relief and finally have some achievements to boast about. This is also the main reason why, although China has continuously refuted the rumors, the United States still has the audacity to try to create an issue out of nothing. However, no matter how shrewd Trump's calculations are, he must recognize a reality. China is willing to discuss tariff issues with the United States, but the relationship between the two sides must be equal and based on mutual respect. The United States must show sufficient sincerity, for example, by taking the initiative to revoke the unreasonable tariffs on Chinese goods. Otherwise, Trump is destined not to receive a call from China, let alone dream of reaching a major deal with China. That's all for today's program. If you like it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your simple actions mean a great deal to me. That's it, and see you next time.